years, like what information they're getting to justify them doing it, which is always really questionable because anything they get, they can't really use later. So it's like, it's great for gathering information. It's terrible if they ever want to bring any of these guys in for anything. So I don't know. It's a strange that, and because it's illegal, they can get really sued for that. I mean, you're not going to get arrested because you're the FBI, but you'd get sued real bad. So yeah, so I think this is really odd that it took this long for the microphone to show up. And as far as I know, the microphone never really does anything. So that's September. They pick up Sid Brodson. It doesn't show up again until November, at which point an unknown man is overheard on the microphone asking a waitress where his .38 revolver was that he loaned out. She told him she sold it. But that's doesn't help me at all because I don't know who the guy is. I don't know who the waitress is. Just some casual conversation they jotted down a note about. By December of that year, the FBI was hearing conflicting stories about Joe's Spaghetti House. There was talk that Broca had brought in another man to operate the restaurant on a 50-50 basis. There was talk the restaurant was losing money. There was talk that Broca was waiting for another place called Time Insurance to buy out his lease just to get out of there. In addition to the restaurant, Broca now had an Avis truck that he was using to buy and sell scrap metal out of. So apparently he wasn't doing good enough off the restaurant to live off of. And then within days of that, they find out that Broca had closed Joe's Spaghetti House and was planning to go to California. Broca was scared. He owed a lot of money. The business was in Joe Anea's name. And with Joe being quote-unquote Frank's boy, this could cause him trouble. So that's one thing. And then apparently also John Aiello was trying to get money out of a sucker, but Broca ruined the plan. An informant thought it was possible that Broca even got the sucker before Aiello did. So he overheard a plan to screw a guy out of money, and then Broca stepped in and did the thing himself. With the restaurant closed in December and early February, the microphone at Joe's Spaghetti House was removed. So yeah, super short, just to kind of bring along the story of Walter Broca and Joe Anea a little bit. Broca does move to California for a while. He doesn't get in any real trouble over this or anything. The Joe Anea Frank Balestrieri thing has always been interesting because I've never been clear on the connection between Joe's dad and Frank. I don't know if they were friends or if Frank was involved in his murder. Like, I don't know what side he came down on that because there's so many like unknown things about some of those 1950s murders. I don't know what side Frank was on, but it's interesting that regardless of how it came down, that Frank basically kind of like took him in and always offered him jobs. And like I said, I don't know if that's because he was friends with his dad or if this was kind of like, now I'm going to take care of you because I'm responsible for your dad's death. Like, I don't know how that plays out. So it's an interesting dynamic. And although Joe is never really anybody of any importance, he's just always around as a bartender, he does sort of get that special favor.
So Joe, you would say really not a Mafia member per se, probably just kind of always running in those circles.
Yeah, I think he does get officially made a member at one point, but I don't know exactly like why. If it's just sort of like an honorary, like, hey, you've been good to us, we'll let you in. Because he's, he got a file open on him like everybody else did. And he never really was involved in anything. Like, he wasn't even a gambler. Like, he was just a bartender. But he was around everybody. Mm-hmm. So, he probably knew some stuff. But
yeah, and he probably just had a good enough relationship with enough people that got him into... I mean, I guess, wouldn't you equate it to the mafia and a gang are very similar in nature. And if you're friends with a bunch of guys that are in the mafia, they don't need to have a reason to make you part of the mafia. They just kind of, they're like, this guy's cool, let's let him in.
Yeah.
It's
kind of odd, but yeah.
And not to mention on top of that, like you said, he was always a bartender, and Frank needed bartenders.
Oh, yeah, he always needed bartenders.
So maybe he was just considered one of those dependable bartenders that got him enough statute that he's like, yeah, you're part of the family.
Yeah.
Because you're helping our businesses run.
But, that's it. That's this not super exciting episode, but I want to get it out there because Joe's going to come up again. Walter Brokaw's going to come. Walter Brokaw's like I don't want to say a major figure because that's overselling him, but he's been around quite a bit. I should point out as well that Brokaw was very good friends with Joe's dad. Like when Jack and Naya was killed, like Walter Brokaw was with him that entire day, so they were really tight. It could be a similar thing on his end as well, where like, I wanted to go in business with you because I was such close friends with your dad. I knew you since you were a child, sort of thing. So Joe like grew up just knowing everybody.
And I find Walter Brokaw to be kind of interesting because based on the story you just told, it seems like he ran to California because he was afraid for his life.
Yeah.
I mean, it strongly suggests that. But then now you're saying he comes back.
He'll come back, yeah.
And he actually meddles with the mafia again.
Yeah.
When he returns. So
yeah.
So maybe that's not why he ran?
He's a strange guy. Like I say, like I refer to him as like the flunky, which I'm getting, very biased reports, obviously. But like he's always put on these like crap jobs. Like he runs a restaurant and he fails at it. He was previously involved in like refurbishing the jukeboxes and that business went under. And like he's like always put on these things where like, hey, I'm going to make you build things. Like at one point he was working construction, and to cut costs working construction, like he hires homeless guys as day laborers, which is nothing wrong with that. Like giving homeless guys work is awesome. But they didn't know anything about construction. So it was really crappily done construction. Mm-hmm. Like just this guy just half-asses everything he touches.
Interesting. That whole dynamic is just interesting to me because are we going to hear a little bit of a story of what brings him back? Is there
I don't recall exactly how it plays out. We'll have to see when we get there. But we're not done with him. Like he's just always around.
Yeah, and it just seems like if he ticked off enough people to the point where he had to run to California, makes me think that him coming back isn't going to be a welcome thing, and he would be watching over his back the whole time.
Yeah.
So,
he's an interesting guy. And actually, one more thing I'll throw out there, just because this is a short one, I can throw random crap in there. Brokaw was named one of the top 10 hoodlums. Like in 1957, when they had like the top 10 hoodlum program and they made each office pick the 10 guys, he made the list of top 10. And I would definitely not put him on that list. And that's probably more a reflection on the level of intelligence the FBI had in 1957, that they didn't know who should have been top 10. And he was just one of the guys that was always around. Mm-hmm. But it's interesting that he made the cut, because to me, like if you asked me right now, I couldn't name all 10 guys. I don't remember who all the 10 were. But he's not a top 10 guy.
you're like you probably could list 50 people that should be ahead of him.
Well, I don't know about 50. But like if you made a top 20 list, like he's on the low end of the 20. So yeah, it's interesting that he got such huge coverage early on, when, in my view, he amounts to practically nothing. He's just the guy who's always around and fails.
But I can see why he would possibly make that list, just because it seems like he was kind of front-facing on a lot of things. You're talking...
He is.
A mob-associated restaurant, he's running it. Like you said, the refurbishing of jukeboxes, he's the guy running it. and they probably clearly knew that business was also mob fronted.
Yeah.
So he probably looks like a much bigger figure than